All right. Let's go ahead and get rolling. So, hello, I am Jill Muselar. I'm a director of product marketing here at Amperity, and Kayla Benningfield is joining me today as the head of our product innovation team. We are here to talk about the launch of Amperity Profile Accelerator that came out on March 16th. It's a much faster, more comprehensive, and accurate approach to assembling the customer profiles you need to power your marketing cloud. So, Caleb, before we pick apart the faster, more comprehensive, more accurate piece, let's just talk first about this departure for us at Amperity. We've been known forever for having our enterprise CDP. So, how is Profile Accelerator a different product from a CDP?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically, the gist is that onboarding to any sort of marketing cloud is all about taking disparate data from a bunch of different sources. So data is collected on online, in-store, loyalty, web, mobile apps, all kinds of things, and getting that data onboarded into a marketing cloud is super painful for people. And so we've built. Amperity is very great at taking raw data and turning it into a flexible, robust, unified customer profile. And we've built an offering to pre-configure the integrations to the Adobe suite out there. And so we can stand up the profiles and do our kind of machine learning based identity resolution and turn that into something clean and that Adobe can understand. And it's about 70 some odd percent faster than the traditional method of building a lot of ETLs and that kind of thing.
Yeah, the ETL is interesting. As we spent roughly the last year talking about if this was a product that we needed to offer, we've talked to lots of our customers, a number of partners from various consultancies, and they tell us that preparing the data for Adobe or putting it into the XDM schema is a really major pain point. One consultant even likened it to pouring like a foundation for a house, and it's in concrete. So once it's hardened, you can't, it's very hard to change it. You're really stuck with what you poured, and it's expensive and difficult to change. So tell us more about how Amperity does this differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So in general, I mean, this is a slide that has, basically a screenshot from some of the Adobe documentation for how to get data into Adobe, and it kind of emphasizes a lot of the things that you're getting from Adobe. And over here in the bottom left, you see this little ETL tooling box, and it's basically saying, hey, you just use, batch your data in and build, some sort of data integration to Adobe. But it kind of minimizes what is a truly painful amount of effort. It can take months or even years because you have to understand the raw data, you have to understand the Adobe platform and the APIs and all of the kind of elements that are necessary to make that work. And so our whole theory here is that rather than writing a bunch of one-off ETLs, you can use a platform like Amperity to give that a really first-class set of tools that will do things just significantly faster. And so, the kind of general flow here is, we integrate the various data sets from, your PII, your web data, your sort of email response histories. We stitch all of that into a unified profile, and then we use that to build different models, pre-configured what we call databases for different Adobe tools, and then we integrate that directly into the variety of different Adobe components. So if you're using, Adobe Campaign, but you're also using the Experience Cloud stuff, then you can actually use, a single data integration point, and then just tune it for each of them and have a single point of integration. And then the actual speed that we do that is quite a bit faster than the legacy model.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit about the use cases that our customers that are using this already. What are they doing there? Once we've taken in all of that online data that sort of exists inside the marketing cloud, and then the offline data that you just mentioned from all the other places, and we stitch it together into identities, and we get it translated. What is a customer doing with that data from that point?
So at that point, we will integrate it directly into your Adobe system. So you'll have, certainly your base profiles and any behaviors that are necessary, and then you can activate in each of those tools or customize site experiences, and and basically get the value that you're paying Adobe for, much easier and much quicker. But as a sort of data management platform plugged into the front of that process, you also get the ability to more easily create, new flexible attributes to power, kind of direct analyst interactions. So you can query every bit of data using visual or direct SQL editing, and basically it allows you to just be more agile with it, and because day-to-day use cases can be different. So an example from a real world use case is, you know, um, let's say your data captures birth date. Um, then through a traditional method, you might integrate that into Adobe as a field called birth date. But then you have a campaign and you want to leverage age groups. Um, so, we can, in simple speech, say, oh, well, if I know what today is and I know their birth date, then I can say, great, today minus birth date, and now I know how old they are, and can break them into different age groups and customize their experience in that way. Um, Once the data is loaded into Adobe, creating that sort of roll up or calculated derived field is actually pretty complex. But and so doing it for a one-off campaign might actually be prohibitive, or just like you might have to interact with a different team to get that kind of information. You can hop into Amperity though, and you are able to easily create a new field and just push that new field into Adobe, or create your list and push that into your preferred activation tool, and it makes it easy for you to solve, kind of, oh, I want to use that data, but I want to use it in a way that's not currently stored that way, and it makes it super flexible to live with.
Yeah. Yeah, in talking to our teams, they tell us that doing that helps us save our customers a lot of money because we can really limit the amount of attributes and the sizes of the profiles that get ingested into Adobe because it's not optimized to take in all that data. Whereas on the Amperity end, we welcome all of it because it makes more robust calculations and predictive models for us to build into the profiles. A couple others that I had heard, we had one customer that was trying to launch a new technology out to the market, but there was a lot of limitations. They only really wanted to market that to customers that lived in certain geographic areas and already owned certain types of their products. And before they had the Amperity profiles, they weren't really able to query the data in a way that got it down to exactly who they should target. And then once those profiles were stood up, they could really truly understand where to spend those marketing dollars and who to focus on. So that was one pretty cool use case that a customer had shared with us. Um, I know we're going to go into the demo a little bit more, but before that, I wanted to share a list of questions our technical teams had prepared to share that you might want to be thinking about if you're thinking about implementing a marketing cloud. Um, so I think this could be good for this audience. The first one is what is your plan to prepare the data before you send it off to your marketing cloud? How are you gonna shape that data and get it into the right schema? The second question to be thinking about is as you're about to send that data off to the marketing cloud, you're going to need some sort of consistent identifier or linking key. So what is the key that you plan to use, and how do you plan to keep that consistent across that online and offline data um, before you send it off to the cloud? And then the last is if you're planning on using derived or calculated attributes like the birth date that Caleb was just mentioning, how and where do you plan to calculate and store those attributes? Knowing the answers to those questions can probably help guide a little bit you're thinking about how you go about implementing. Caleb, do you have any others that you wanted to share? And if not, maybe I'll let you go ahead and dive into the product.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, I think the other things that come into my mind are, Google is, everybody's generally aware that Google's deprecating the kind of cookie concept that a lot of people are reliant on today. And I know that there's a very large push to move into more of a first-party data space. And so I think that, you know, beyond what you're doing with online data today, you know, what's the plan for integrating those legacy sort of data sources to make sure you get all of your first-party data in one spot and are able to leverage that in your activation tools. And then the other piece of it would be, you know, what sort of data sets don't fit into, you know, like you want to have a comprehensive set of data, right? And so, you know, a lot of Adobe tools are biased towards things related to the type of activation that they're loading. And so, what about data sets that don't fit into those models? So, for example, if you're adopting Adobe Campaign, you're probably moving off of a different email tool of some form or activation tool. So response history, you know, might want to be able to leverage response history in terms of how you do, you know, predict what campaigns are going to be effective going forward, or identify people with high engagement. And so, you know, being able to load Amperity is built to load any kind of data. You can load inventory, product type of data, you know, direct like event logs, anything you need. And so, you know, just being sure to make sure that your integration strategy doesn't exclude important data sets because they're not, you know, something that Adobe handles super well out of the box. So,
Yeah, that
cool.
makes sense.
All right. Well, I'm happy to hop into the data or into the demo here. I want to start with a couple of small slides that kind of give some context, because we are talking about, you know, what is a fairly complex topic here, which is how do we do data management significantly faster? And you know, when you hear someone like us say that we're getting onboarded to Adobe is 70% faster using Amperity than build, I mean, it sounds almost like a fantastical number. And so I want to be able to be clear about what's happening here. And it does require me to get into some, you know, topics around data management. So I want to start with a couple of small slides here that kind of talk about the legacy model for onboarding data and the you know, way that we've improved upon that, and then I'll hop directly into the app. So just a refresh on the slide that we were showing. All right, so I talked about how, you know, in the you know, kind of Adobe layout, they have this little ETL box, and they that can take lots and lots of work. Well, the legacy model for how you would do that sort of data prep is kind of like this. So like in this example, we have a loyalty data set of customer records. We have an e-commerce data set, and we have a point of sale data set. And then, you know, within each of those, you might have duplicates. They all have their own schema. They're all shaped differently. And so you're going to have to standardize them into some sort of consistent data set, potentially clean up any anomalies. And then you'll have to look for duplicates and merge within the given data set. And then you'll have to also then implement some sort of merge or identity resolution across those different data sets. And that'll give you sort of a merged profile data asset. But then you also need the behaviors from those systems. So you have your, you know, in this example, transactions at the summary level and the item level. And you would also have to do that same standardization cleanup and sort of roll up into, you know, for each of those different data sets or tables or kind of, you know, databases. And then basically you would be able to use your merge profiles. You join that to like an ID graph. And finally, you have, you know, the behaviors linked to a single ID, and you can begin to roll all that up and merge it into a unified profile of some form. And then you have to, for every single one of those little boxes, it could be, you know, between 1 and 3 different jobs you have to create. And it's, you know, and then of course, manually joining the new ID back to all the data so that you can roll up the data stuff. It's just a lot of moving parts. And so if you imagine each of these boxes taking even a day, right, then we're talking about a lot of work for even a skilled developer to take on to get to this, you know, unified data asset. And then the other thing that I want to call out is that, you know, this would be, you know, you build this for your production setup, but then ongoing, you're going to add new data, you're going to add new fields, you're going to want to change the logic or update how identity resolution works. And so you're also going to have to maintain a separate version of that. So everything you build, if you built all of these into different jobs, then you would also have to have a dev environment, and that dev environment often will not have the same infrastructure or not be able to use the same data as production, and you'll have to build migration scripts to move from A to B. and like even if you leverage the Adobe model, the Adobe doesn't have an out-of-the-box sort of dev environment or first-class concept of change management. So often you're either doing things in production, which can be pretty high risk, or you're having to invest pretty heavily in the different environments you would use to do data management. So that's the legacy model of how we do things. The Profile Accelerator version of it, and this is the Amperity model that we've built over the years and have improved on by leveraging, integrating, doing this exact data flow for, many different large enterprise customers across many different verticals and parts of the industry. Basically, in this diagram, you have your dotted lines for where some actual work has to be done, and then the rest of it's handled by the platform. So we've really built this to handle raw data. So you don't have to shape or conform to any sort of schema with Amperity. So this exact same setup where we have these 7 different sources of data, we apply a library of tags. And so we tag, profile data with profile tags and behavior data with an appropriate library of behavior tags. So in this example, customer tags for customer data, transaction tags for the transaction data. And then our tools actually standardize that, run identity resolution on it, and then perform several other useful steps. So, we create standardized assets. This is 3 of about 8 that exist today. And then we also take that ID and we put it back out on the raw data. So, which is, for your kind of analysts and data science people, it creates a radical level of transparency where you can just look at the original data and join on the new ID and not have to like write a new ETL to propagate that ID out or join to an ID graph table. But then the standardized data assets make it very easy to layer on educated models. So we've worked with lots of customers over the years. And so, once we have this standardized cleaned up model that we've output, we can layer on a variety of analytics models, or, an internal team can use these to build their own data science models of some form. But all you have to do is, you can either use one of our out of the box models here, or you can, code your own, but it drastically simplifies it and lets you solve the most interesting problem there. And then all you have to do is layer on sort of merge logic and then and choose which attributes you want, and then you have your unified profile. So, just to kind of reiterate, in the older version, you have to build tens of jobs, and then you have to monitor, maintain, and have a separate development environment. In our version, you tag the raw data. The tool does all of the work for you to get you 80–90% of the way there, and then you just tune the eventual rules that you use for merge, and you have your data asset. And then the other kind of thing, and I'll show you this in the app, is that rather than having a dev environment and a prod environment, we have a first-class thing called sandboxes, where everything I'm showing you here has a version control, and you can create a branch of it, test with production infrastructure and production data, and do a before and after, run QA, in the same environment, and then it will automatically migrate the changes once you're ready to move to production. And so that part can save, even more than 70% of the time compared to a traditional change management workflow. Cool. So obviously slides are one thing, but let me show you how this works in the actual app. So if I pop over here, this is the landing page for our Adobe Accelerator demo environment. Just for the record, you will see some PII in here. It's all fake, so no worries on that. But much like the conversation we've had, it's all about going from raw data to being onboarded and integrated with Adobe. So in this source, this tab here, it's all about taking, kind of identifying and tagging raw data. We have a library of what we call couriers. Basically lots of integrations to different data storage concepts or different applications that make it very easy to pull data directly from your source systems or directly from your existing data warehouses. We grab that data and we apply a library of tags. So in this example here, we have, much like in our slides there, a loyalty, point of sale, e-commerce. If I click on the e-commerce customer profile, you'll see, this is the way that the data was stored for that customer profile. There's a customer ID, there's some PII in here, there's some, information about their job, that kind of stuff. And under the hood, we have a whole library of these semantic tags. And so basically these tags say, regardless of how this data was stored, you can apply this set of rules to it or think about it in this way. So if I choose an email tag here, then I will know it is a handle at a domain dot an extension. Like I can apply email rules to that, and I can obfuscate it or use it for hashing downstream. I can do any kind of reasonable thing to it, but it also informs our identity resolution model. And then we also have a library of those for the transactions. So this is a simplified model, but an order ID, order date time, etc. And so we run through, tag the data, and then we run our stitch model. And so Stitch generates an Amperity ID graph over data. So in this example here, we had 66.8 million records. Our biggest customer has 5 billion records. When you think about these inbound records, I'm referring specifically to the profiles. So if you in this example tenant, I have a clickstream data set, e-commerce, point of sale, loyalty. If I shop online, I'll have an e-commerce ID. If I shop in store, I'll have a point of sale ID. So I would have 2 different profile records with different source IDs. So that's 66.8 million source IDs, but each of these may have hundreds of millions or billions of transactions of behaviors associated with them, but that's the profile level version. And within that 66.8 million set of source IDs, we found 33.9 million Amperity IDs. That's roughly analogous to finding a person, right? So within this record, we found about 34 million people. Now an Amperity ID, this is where this is part of the radical transparency element here. An Amperity ID is actually a graph. So when I talk about how we tag data and it produces these standardized data assets, you can see here that we tag the data, and then this is a view of one of those data assets. So you can see each column represents one of those semantic tags I showed you. So if I click on this, I can flip through here and see different examples of Amperity clusters. So right here, this is Kyle Hazan, right?
I'm going to give you a quick time check. I want to make sure Brian's got enough time to tee up any questions. We've got about
you're absolutely right. I'll move through this pretty quick here, but this is definitely the most complex part. But thank you for the time. So in this example, you see 5 records, 2 clickstream, 1 e-commerce, loyalty profile, etc. You can see that there's different types of PII in here, same email address with different last name. Sometimes people get married, change their last name, that kind of thing. But the point is there's different quality of data, and what we do is we generate a graph, and you can actually for every single link we will use 40 different machine learning algorithms, and we'll generate kind of a link and give it a score between 0 and 5, and that tells you about how confident we are they represent the same person. And so the point is, now that we have this graph, what we'll do is we have a library of out-of-the-box models, but you can also create your own. And we can create, just an Adobe data set out of it. So much like in here, we can configure the merge profiles and add any attributes. And then, we can create an Adobe campaign specific data model. So, the legacy Adobe campaign has a bunch of NMS tables. We can literally create the exact schema that Adobe wants. And, from this UI, you can write queries and do all kinds of things in here. I won't spend a ton of time on this for time purposes, but you can write queries using either visual or SQL, and then we will just directly integrate it. So that same profile, we can use it to directly integrate into Adobe Campaign or Adobe Experience Cloud. And then the last piece I want to talk about is that change management piece. So if I click over here, I've already generated what's called a sandbox, and you can see here, my sandbox is up to date. Well, basically this is a copy of the whole production config. So if I go back into production and I come in here and I create a new example model, and I name it, new query, I hit activate, then, what happens is I now have change management between these 2 environments. So if I come back here, you'll see now I have an update, and I can actually see, hey, look, my new query is in here. And so the point is I can make changes in a safe way and then move changes between environments in a way that really handles scale well. So the point is, just to put a bow on it, we tagged the data. It outputs a bunch of standardized data sets. We layer on any business specific rules, but for the Profile Accelerator, we layer on Adobe educated models, and then we easily directly integrate them into your entire Adobe suite. So it drastically saves time on all the ETL building and gives you a really nice data management system for that workflow.
Well, thank you so much for that demo, Caleb. I just have a few questions here. This one's for you, Jill. if a customer were to purchase Amperity profiles, are these only useful for Adobe, or are there other marketing clouds that the solution could work for?
Yeah. Well, out of the box with Profile Accelerator for Adobe, our intention was to get up and running fast on Adobe Marketing Cloud, but you're absolutely right. And we actually find that most of our customers are very quickly see use cases beyond the Adobe Marketing Cloud. So a number are connecting to both some Adobe tools and Salesforce tools. You see other things like customer care, in-store point of sale functionality that they might want to hand off to associates in bricks and mortar. So yes, those profiles become much more useful, and that's another key benefit here, right? Like you spent all this time building something and it's now useful across many different applications.
Okay, so maximizing on investments, definitely.
Yeah.
And this question is actually for you, Caleb. Reading Adobe's product materials, it looks like you can actually still bring in offline data to the AEP, Adobe Experience Platform. Can you talk about why our solution for the Amperity Profile Accelerator is different from that?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of main areas are, you know, in some ways, their interface for that is a kind of like building legacy ETLs. So there is they presume certain types or shapes of data that you have to conform to. So that doesn't necessarily take raw data and then conform it to an Adobe schema. So if your data is already in that format, then yeah, their interface can make it fairly simple to just load it into Adobe. But if it's not, then you actually would have to do some sort of pre-processing outside of Adobe to get it into the rough shape and format that they would expect for the at least the top level types of entities. It also does not have a robust ability to sort of convert raw data into attributes. So building, anything. Enterprise customers need, highly tailored attributes built exactly for their business, and you need to be able to have, roll those things up in a way that is sustainable and kind of clear. And the flexibility and simplicity of that is actually not, it's not built for, the types of data sets that most enterprise customers have, especially in like legacy style systems. And then the kind of last piece is that change management element, which is you are effectively operating in production whenever you work on your Adobe stack. And maybe there are strategies for that where you like make a copy of it and make changes and then switch everything to point to the new copy. But to be honest, that's still pretty risky compared to maintaining an actual development environment and doing some sort of change management. So the safety and speed to which you can do things after your initial configuration is pretty different as well.
Okay, I have one final question just before we wrap up and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, implementation around tech is a pain point sometimes. So how long does it take to actually implement this new profile accelerator and seeing the return on that?
Yeah, so I maintain that using the profile accelerator model, the vast majority of any timeline is based on organizational lift, meaning, getting access to the data or working on use cases and those things, which to be honest is where you should spend your time. The actual technical component there, kind of as I showed in there, once we have access to the data, all we have to do is tag it. Then we can, and the rest of it we can do without a bunch of customization. And then you can spend your time on sort of edge cases and building, any tailored elements that you would need in terms of merge rule logic or custom attributes you want to develop. But building that instance I showed you, I originally configured that entire thing end to end in less than 2 hours. And I'm pretty well versed in this, but like the actual technical configuration of like tag the data, hit run, get the output, apply the out of the box models, tailor it a little bit is pretty simple if you know exactly what you're trying to get to. So you get to spend most of your time on where you should be spending your time, which is discussing actual business use cases and value and mapping data to the things you're trying to accomplish.
Sweet, thank you.
Yep.
So it sounds like you're just shifting your investments to the places for business needs and actually accelerating that. I know we're at time a little over.
The last thing I'll call out is that even if you do it the legacy model, you're going to have to do those things. So yeah. Like you're actually just doing them sooner, and they're the kind of the barrier. So it's not, it's not either or. It's actually just cuts off, what is the majority of the actual work by eliminating some of that data management tedium. So.
Yep. So doing a lot of the heavy lifting for a lot of our clients.
Yeah.
But I know we're a little over time, but thank you to our audience for joining us today, and to Jill and Caleb for today's content. This recording as well will be sent out in a few days. And another thing to point out is just keep an eye out for next month's webinar. We will be joined by the team from Deloitte to talk through some tips and tricks for how to put customer profiles at the center of your marketing clouds investment. And again, thank you again for joining, and enjoy the rest of your week.